Okay, we're good to go. Thank you so much. Happy to see you all here today.
Thank you, Andy. Thank you to you for hosting this and to Big Bear for having me. Thank you all for having me. Um, it's really sweet to see how some of you are doing in the chat. And I guess we'll just go right into the meditation and then I'll offer some light guidance and then do some Dharma reflections afterwards. One thing that I feel like when I think back to, um, you know, just the path and the development of the skill of meditation. I wish that I had kind of learned earlier on about what's called priming the mind or gladdening the mind. Because I think that the way that I had learned meditation was I had this understanding that meditation itself was supposed to be calming or settling. So I'd kind of slam into my meditation period and sit down and then get really frustrated or feel like I was doing it wrong because the mind wouldn't settle. So actually, what's helpful for supporting the mind in settling into the meditation is to spend a few moments priming the mind for meditating. That can include um, relaxing the body, taking a few moments just to relax the body to arrive into the meditation period. Um, it could be just doing some like aimless gazing around, like looking around your space. It could mean gladdening the mind by reflecting on some of your wholesome qualities, or I saw, people were feeling joyful and grateful and loving and happy. So just like tuning into that, any kind of flavors of that might be uh, in the mind, and then just resting in that. You can reflect on a moment that you were generous earlier today or in your life, and allow that to kind of fill the mind. So we're kind of orienting the mind already to in a wholesome direction. And then this allows things to kind of soften and gets the mind prepped to meditate. I'll just let's just go ahead and take our posture. So however it feels supportive to you. And without really making any demands on the mind, just maybe checking in with yourself about what would support you in arriving a little bit more fully here. That might mean dropping a little bit more fully into the body. Again, it might just mean tuning into that which is wholesome in the mind right now. Any flavor of sweetness or coziness or metta. And just without demand, giving yourself a few moments to really taste this goodness. And what I notice is when I'm just priming the mind towards meditating by just relaxing and arriving, that often awareness will arise just naturally on its own without any kind of act of will. Just this sense of presence here and now. And within this field of awareness, can be skillful to orient to an anchor. It could be the breath, these sensations of rising and falling, emerging in this field of awareness. Sometimes I find if it gets a little tight, um, orienting to the breath, it can be skillful to have a sense of the whole body sitting, and then the breath kind of emerging within that field, body sensation. We're not trying to create an experience, some kind of special meditative mind or anything like that. Actually, it's more a movement towards simplifying, setting down the chatter, the planning, and resting with these sensations of the body, breath. When awareness arises again, it's almost like emerging from this tunnel, usually of thought, some kind of proliferation of thought. Just noticing what that's like to wake up again, come back into awareness. You might notice some kind of conditioned judgment or sense of having um, made a mistake or something, some kind of start rushing back to the anchor, and just including that in what's being known. Just allowing the mind to progressively relax into the simplicity, resting, resting with the breath. And if you notice that the mind is tending to drift or get a little swimmy, or one teacher calls it a zombie like mind, rather than turning up the effort, you might try playing with turning up the interest or curiosity in what's actually happening. Yeah, so we're tuning into just allowing the awareness to include all. Nothing is left out. recognizing when awareness arises again, reconnecting with the anchor in a wholehearted, non grasping way. Interested yet relaxed. And it doesn't matter how many times the mind becomes absorbed in thought, really that moment of waking up, of recognizing awareness, and using the anchor to keep the awareness refreshed. Be acknowledged what it is that the mind is getting up to. These really deeply worn grooves of thought, or just even the sense of the world arising in the mind. Thank you all for your practice. Yeah. Mhm. Oh, coming back into Zoom at your own pace. One of the benefits of this practice is that we get to really feel what our own pace is. Mm. And start kind of tuning our movements and how we relate to the world to what is actually deeply supportive to our nervous systems, our bodies, and most definitely our minds. Um, I want to just maybe as we're moving into Dharma sharing, just open up the floor for any general questions about the practice, either what we did here today or if anything wants to be shared into the room as we get started. I tend to like to have the Dharma shares be um, kind of more interactive. So um, if there are things that are emerging that you sense that you would like to share, really encourage you to share because I find that it really makes the Dharma share complete. Then, um, so we'll start off with: are there any questions about practice or anything that's been kind of stirring in your hearts that would feel good to share? Steve, hi.
Hi. Yeah, thank you for your guidance. I found the idea of priming to be very helpful. Something I often jump right in, and so that it's nice to have that guidance. Also, I'm curious. You spoke about um, orientating in a wholesome direction, and um, and I've been reflecting on that idea a little bit in contrast to the idea of sort of letting everything be and um, not kind of pushing away the unpleasant. Um, so I wonder how you is the orienting towards the wholesome about sort of helping to settle down into the meditation. Because I also find that orientating towards the wholesome is helpful in just um, moment by moment mindfulness, And so I'm just curious about dichotomy of reflecting on the wholesome versus letting everything be, and some of those things that might be there may, be anxiety or other items that don't feel good.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah, great question. And um, yeah, well, so in this moment is conditioned by all the previous mind moments, right? Like what's arising in the mind right now is not in our control. Like our minds are um, wholesome states arising, unwholesome states, or kind of more neutral states. But how we then uh, orient towards those states um, has a strong impact on our well being in the moment and then the future arising mind states. So the letting it be is really allowing this is how I hold it, Steve. It's like really allowing the mind as it is to be known, right? Like whatever state is arising. Um, and then sometimes what's available, what the practice is kind of pointing towards is just the knowing of the mind and letting it be is already wholesome. It's already moving towards non-delusion, non-ignorance. Um, and then, and sometimes there might need to be a little bit more activity if you sense like, oh, the mind is kind of starting to get, go into spinning or getting absorbed into some kind of blaming or critical rut, then we might sense, okay, maybe this there needs to be some work with this beyond letting it be. So first, just checking the intention of like how am I approaching this mind state? If I'm just not wanting to be a critical person, or it's unpleasant, so then I'm going to kind of bring in metta. There's some underlying aversion to the state. So we want to just watch out that we're not just trying to manage our mind states through practice. And then, but even just having the intentions, the right intention for renouncing an unwholesome state, like really feeling critical, but just even the awareness of like this is a critical mind, and it's my intention to let this go, not kind of double down into it or believe it or ride off into the sunset with it. It's like there's just some wholesome orienting towards it. And then at some point, some people find like bringing in metta, but often in daily life, that's where those kind of just being present to what's actually there and then orienting in a like setting the right intention around it, is often where the practice goes, I find, in daily life. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yes, I think that's really helpful. I guess sometimes there's always often a range of emotions and feelings and so forth. And some of them might be like wholesome. You might feel some gratefulness or metta and some anxiety. At what point, you know, can you turn to that wholesome feeling because that's going to provide comfort and clarity and so forth, or if it's there,
Hmm.
or is there an element of just letting everything kind of be there?
Right, right. Yeah, I think it's a beautiful exploration, Steve. And we're taking interest in how we're working with the mind, how it's affecting our happiness. So if you find that letting it be actually brings about a relaxed, kind of equanimous, way of being with your experience where anxiety or metta, it's this all is welcome. If you find that, oh, I'm starting to kind of go into the anxiety or trying to resolve it in some sort of way, then maybe it's more wholesome to attune to the metta. So it's just a series of experiments that we're playing with our minds, trying out. Um, so maybe I'll read a quote and then we can talk about it. I've been sharing this in different Dharma groups, and it's from Thanissaro Bhikkhu. He says, all too often when we're in the world where our attention gets scattered outside, issues are coming up outside, they demand our attention, they insist that they're important, but they're not nearly as important as the shape of your mind. So you've got to have that sense of priorities clear. You have a very strong sense that what you do right now really is important. They tell you that what they're doing out there is important, but they can't help you in the way that you can help yourself. They can't harm you in the way that you can harm yourself. So you have to be very careful with yourself. Give yourself a lot of attention. Give your mind a lot of attention and be confident that this is something that you can do and it's worth doing. That's how the mind grows. That's how you show goodwill for yourself. When you say, may I be happy, that's something you have to follow through with. It's not just an idle wish, it's a determination. So make sure you follow it as far as you can. I really love that. It kind of as somehow like, cutting through with some wisdom about like, what are our priorities here? How are we taking care? I'm just curious if any folks have any thoughts about this, what I've just read, or any other questions or thoughts. Where can I find this quote? I can cut and paste it at the end, Jennifer. Yeah, yeah, Pat. Hi.
I'm new to this group, but I've been with Shambhala practices. I don't know. I don't know, even know what you guys are, how you're connected, but I've been I'm I'm 82 years old and still active, and I've been, now that I'm not working, home alone. I have a husband, but he takes up very little space in the house with me, so I have lots of space in my head to myself, and besides the meditation, which helps me calm my mind, but the minute I get out of bed, I'm going 8 different directions, and so I'm just paying attention to myself and how I relate to myself, and it's very disturbing, at times, but I'm trying to greet it with kindness towards myself. And that's, that whole thing, observing is one thing, but then being kind to myself and not what's come out of that. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's a straight line to me. It's very, I don't feel like I'm doing a very good job of it, but I'm seeing that just the minuscule amount of time that I allow myself to be okay with my thoughts and my self-condemnation that I give myself, it creates a whole new space for my mind to make another choice. And it's not that I choose it. I mean, I choose it, but before I never had the opportunity to choose it. It just was there and I never noticed it. And I just went from one to the other, and then I got frustrated, and then I, lashed out, or I went for a walk or whatever. I tried to calm myself down. But just allowing the discomfort and trying to finally in my age realizing that I'm okay, you know. All that self-condemnation, yeah, maybe it motivated me, but wow, what a job. I don't know. I'm just happy to be here. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Pat. That's the teaching there. Yeah. Yeah, just showing up for the show. And then there's just some alchemy that takes place even with that. Yeah. Mhm. Any other comments? Madeline chatted. You mentioned that we don't want to simply manage mind states. Oh, Madeline, is it okay for me to read this out? Yeah? Okay. Um, you mentioned that we don't want to simply manage mind states through practice with the name it to the it thinking. I was thinking this helps us see more clearly, less hooked by emotions and respond skillfully. Maybe you can
I
elaborate.
did a terrible job typing. I should probably just explain it.
Thank you.
I really zoomed in on when you said we don't want to use practice to simply manage mind states. And I was like, wow, that's a really interesting like take on it, because I know that sometimes I really do think of practice as managing some of my mind states, like kind of naming an emotion so that I can, the name it to tame it was what I was for typing, but kind of naming an emotion so that I'm not so identified with it. So I can kind of see more clearly, you know, and respond more skillfully. And so I really would love to hear more what you meant about that we don't want to use practice to manage mind states, and just to learn from you on that.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Madeline. Thanks for making that clarification, because it sounds like you're practicing skillfully. I think what I meant by it is that sometimes we can, and I think it comes from care. You know, I don't think it's like, I think it comes from a good place of trying to control ourselves, trying to control our experience, trying to make ourselves be the kinds of people that we think we should be. And so practice can sometimes become another tool in our toolkit for that. Um, and we are, you know, not letting unwholesome states kind of run rampant. Um, but it's not out of like a wish to control, it's out of a wish to suffer less. Like there's some wisdom, a wisdom discernment that happens. um Let me see if there's more there. I think the quality is different, right? Like when we're working with um, mind states and shiftings to wholesome states, there's a quality of clear seeing. Like this, I've gone down this road a million times and it's just a dead end. Or I know what happens if I just get on this horse and ride it, you know. It gets, you know, gory or however it, you know. Um, yeah. So there's like a clear seeing of the suffering that some taking, you know, just climbing aboard certain mind states will cause. Any other comments? Will,
Yes.
hi.
Hi. So I want to invite forgiveness for interrupting the meditation there. It's, maybe it deepens someone's practice and serves as an object lesson for what you're talking about now, because that may have been quite aversive, right? And some judgment happening. But that too is to be worked with.
Mm.
I really appreciated your response of how allowing the mind with whatever state it's in without trying to change it is already wholesome. And you shared 2.5 reasons One, it's non-aversion, allowing. Two, it's non-ignorance. And I just read a piece by Melvin Escobar on Lion's Roar, where he talked about he and 4 other teachers about how there's kind of a canopy of ignorance over the 3 poisons. And so I was like, oh, okay, I just learned about that. So there's that piece. And then you mentioned, you didn't say it directly, but what I wrote down is also a gateway to equanimity. And I practice, last fall, equanimity became kind of everything for me. And my way of riding the waves of joy and sorrow and emotion. And as a person in recovery, working with cravings as well. And so I kind of heard it applied to that in this moment, yeah, I may want some weed, or I may have caught a whiff because it's everywhere in this legal cannabis community. But I can ride the wave of that energy, of that thought, of that feeling attached to it, and all of that. And it'll pass. Can I stay? Kind of a thing. And so I don't know, hopefully that adds something to the picture and the texture of it. And hopefully I'm reflecting your intention. Okay. And then imperfection. I'm having to embrace that myself. I grew up in a place that all eyes are on me all the time. So it's not okay to make a mistake like that, especially in front of other people, especially in mixed company, right? So I'm having to actually practice self-compassion very, very deeply and shift. And it took a lot of time and energy. But I feel like I got there now that I'm hearing my own voice speaking into the space. Getting there. So any reflection on what I just shared is appreciated.
Yeah, thank you so
you.
much, Will. Yeah. Yeah, what's coming to mind is like just pointing out the flavor of equanimity that I'm hearing is like that mind which knows to not pick it up again, not pick up the craving again, or having ridden out the suffering, like having picked up the suffering and ridden that out to the brutal end over and over and over again. And then kind of what develops in that kind of weather worn recognition, immediate sense of recognition of the suffering, and not choosing differently out of aversion to it, but choosing differently because there's some love for oneself, there's some sense of like wanting something more, wanting better for oneself. So it's not like a fearful moving away from something, but just like, I know you, Mara. So if people familiar with that reference, I know you, Mara. Yeah, like I know you, you know, uh, that which leads to suffering. Yeah. Thank you, Will. Mm-hmm. So I want to share another quote. And I think that there is this quality of like, I think the reason why I picked that initial quote was because of the pull to blame our external environment for our internal states, and of course they're interrelated. But it's so, our senses spin up such a convincing sense and solid sense of the world, and it's very easy to attribute all of our suffering to the external world. And undoubtedly that there is some truth, there are truths in that, there is histories of oppression and current legacies of that unfolding, and yet, gosh, how do I articulate this? It's like uh, we don't want to abandon our own minds to that. We don't want to abandon our minds to the sense of like the world is a hopeless, suffering place, or that person is a hopeless and suffering person, and I'm going to just remove myself. We want to take a look at the mind that is conceiving the world that way and tend directly to the suffering of those perceptions. Does that make sense, what I'm saying there? So I think the good news is that we have some choicefulness about how am I going to take care of myself in the world, in my environment, and in the world that my mind creates. Well, everything is mediated by this mind, and how am I tending to this mind so that the perceptions are as clearly grounded in truth as possible. I want to read this. It's an unattributed quote from the Zen tradition. We are here to end suffering. If ending suffering is more important than anything, we will end suffering. If ending suffering is not more important than anything, we will not end suffering. If I am suffering, it is because I'm choosing something over ending suffering. We are not here to create and cling to beliefs. We are here to pay attention. We are here to use everything in our experience to see how we cause ourselves to suffer so we can drop that and end suffering. I love that. I think that really points to something. If I'm suffering, it's because I'm choosing something over the end of suffering, actively in the moment. Like just again, what I'm kind of talking about abandoning oneself to perceptions that are painful without kind of recognizing that they are perceptions. Oh. Yeah. Let's maybe see if there's any last comments in the room. Yeah, Jennifer, hi.
Question. When you say wrong perceptions, or is that what you would call delusion? Or because I often say, may I be free from anger, craving, and delusion, but then sometimes I think, what is what am I trying to free myself from exactly?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's the sense that somebody out there is doing, for as an example, somebody out there is doing something to me, you know, and then from there we can just kind of, the ball gets rolling, and we take birth out of that into a sense of a victimized self, and this whole knot of suffering emerges from there. But we can recognize that experience, that that's what's being believed, that certain old patterns are getting, you know, evoked, and some old conditionings getting evoked. We can recognize, like, that person was just, you know, and as the mind recognizes how it's conceiving, it can kind of see, oh, the person was just, you know, the person just was driving. They weren't trying to run me off the road. You
Uh-huh.
know, it can just be, you know, we can see from a perspective that's not just rooted in something very deeply personal about the world being out to get us. That makes sense.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, so Andy, I think I'll turn it over to you, and I'll post this quote, Jennifer, in the chat from Tanasaru Bhikkhu.